Good afternoon, friends. I'd like to welcome you today to What's in Tegan's Storage Locker. It's the show that dares to ask the question, just what is in my storage locker? The answer today, well, friend, the answer is comics. The answer's always going to be comic books. I grab a fistful of comic books. We look through them here on the camera for your entertainment, possibly even edification, maybe even a little bit of education. There's a little cat who likes to run through the filming area. He's laying next to us as we speak, so we'll see how he behaves as the recording process continues. The first thing I'd like to do is to point you in the direction of the Patreon. If you like my work, if you like what I do, that's how you support me continuing to do it. I just put up a bunch of new videos on this very account. Every week practically. I just put up a new video where I look through the first volume of Fist of the North Star. And pretty much every week, although, I reserve the right to not do it if it's a bum week or something, but pretty much every week for a while I've also been looking at the new comics as they come out. But the order of the day today is stuff that has been hanging around my storage locker, such as Battle Chasers number 3 from July, is that July 2000? July 1998. All the dates just they blend together after a certain point. So, Joe Mad's big push after X-Men, his billion-dollar idea, which, to be fair, it had trouble coming out, but he did manage to eventually make a video game out of it, which came out not that long ago in the big scheme of things, within the decade, actually. And he's gone back recently and given us more Battle Chasers. I need to assemble the whole set. I think I may even be missing a couple issues from the middle of the run. But I have most of the Battle Chaser stuff. And we even read the first issue, the first couple issues from Battle Chasers on the TikTok well over a year ago, I think. But anyway, yes, I'm all in on Joe Madureira. And this was his big, creator-owned push for this, what in hindsight and at the time seemed like a really big play for the aesthetics of like the Final Fantasy games. I'm not a game player, as is well documented, but Final Fantasy VII was big enough that it was an influence over many areas of pop culture. And certainly Joe Madureira, all along for his career, since he started at X-Men, like 93 or 94, that had been one of his big things, was bringing the burgeoning aesthetic of video games, Japanese video games specifically, into American comics, more so than even, the manga or the anime influences. And with Battle Chasers, obviously it was intended to become a video game. It didn't ultimately for many years, but it did eventually, which is kind of interesting, because that's what he was always aiming at. Not a movie or a TV show or a cartoon, but a video game. Which strikes me as interesting, and in terms of being an ambition that is a bit off the beaten path for the comic book industry. It's outside of our usual scope of, if it does well, then maybe it can become a basic cable television show, or best possible circumstances, it becomes a movie series. No, man, he wanted to make a video game. So, creator, story, pencils, Joe Madureira. He's working with this guy named Munier Sharrieff, who I don't really know if he worked on anything else but this. Tom McWeeney on inks, Liquid on colors, with Christian Lichtner, Aaron Luzin, those are the names of the colorists. Richard Starkins and Comicraft, letters. Comicraft's John Marizigan, having trouble reading that font. Design work. Yeah, early comic for in terms of crediting the designer. Now, unfortunately, this is the first generation, or really the only generation of Cliffhanger books. And Cliffhanger didn't maybe print as many comic books as we would have hoped. But they printed some nice looking comic books. But those nice looking comic books, oh, this guy's name is Bengus. Yes, I don't really remember the names of any of these. Certainly not a henchman bozo. Bengus. Hey, Bengus. The character on the cover is, well, that's Red Monica. If you know anything about Battle Chasers, you know the name of this character. And she's not even the main character. She's a side pirate whose fate intersects with that of the main heroes. Always a little bit of tongue-in-cheek with her design there. But anyway, what was I saying? The Achilles heel of this whole line of very gorgeous comics otherwise is the fact that they have this really state-of-the-art computer printing that is printing so dark. And to be fair, they weren't the only people following into this trap. Pretty much everyone, with a few exceptions, were printing comics too dark for a lot of the early computer color work, especially in the late 90s. The early and mid-90s computer work you see is still garish enough that it stands out. But when they start getting into more subtlety, that's when they start getting into problems. Because I know, when they were printing this, or when they were preparing this on a CRT monitor, it looked so much brighter in terms of color value. You print it, and unfortunately it looks like mud. All of Tom McWeeney's, nice inking comes out a little bit distorted by the dark printing. Speaking of Bengus, what is your problem? Okay, you want to just sit there? He wants to read. Okay, so yeah, she's breaking into a prison, if I recall correctly, where we are in the story. And she uses her assets to incapacitate possible threats. That's sort of what she does. Oh, wow, Jenko was making shoes? I don't remember the Jenko shoes. Man, Jenko. Whenever I see anyone wearing Jenkos now, I want to start screaming. Like Donald Sutherland at the end of The Body Snatchers screaming. Anthrax. Who's doing that? Who's doing that cover? That looks like someone who I'd probably know if they put a signature on it. Of course, that guy being a big comic book fan from way back. Watch the Home Shopping Network. Dynamic Forces showing off mostly Cliffhanger. They got Danger Girl #2, signed by J. Scott Campbell. First issue of Crimson, signed by Brian Augustin. Battle Chasers Prelude, and the hard-to-get Dark Child sketchbook. Dark Child was not Cliffhanger. I don't remember who did Dark Child off the top of my head. I'm sorry. So, yeah, there's a little bit of, there's a big dollop of, the Final Fantasy design ethos here. There's a little bit of Mobius, too, and you see a little dude like that walking around with that hat. So, they're in the mana containment unit. Because, you got to call your magic mana. No one's going to think that you got that from somewhere else. They're going to think that's your idea. So, yeah, she's there to break some guy out. They have to jump out of this. It's a floating prison asteroid, I think. And they fly away on this flying shark. That is great. This is legitimately a thrilling sequence of fantasy that is completely hung out to dry by the coloring. I have not looked at subsequent printings of this material to know whether or not, when it's been put together in a trade, they have recolored it. But look at that. It looks on the screen that you're looking at, it looks for you much brighter than the actual artifact in my hand, and it still probably looks really dark on your screen. Oh, basketball. Yes, well, that was certainly a movie. Foster grants. What is this? Want to win $1 million. Guess who's behind those Foster grants? And these are, look to be actresses on the WB television network. So I imagine if you watch there, you'll find out the answer to your question. All right, so... yeah, fantasy stuff. Fantasy stuff. There's King Munier. He's got a table full of advisors. There's warriors and viziers and accountants and all sorts of your fantasy types. What are you doing? You see what I have to put up with here. Every month, first of the month comes around. Never has anything for the rent. He just eats, sleeps all day, and then decides at various points when I'm trying to work that he really needs my attention. So I don't remember what the exact machinations of these various fantasy people are. And this is interesting. I barely remember this. This looks like it might be fun to go back and investigate, because this is apparently a trading card game from Wizards of the Coast, no less. With art and story by Jim Lee and Wildstorm. That's interesting. From back in the day when Wizards did other games besides Magic. Now, of course, they do Dungeons and Dragons now, technically speaking, I know. But they used to do a number of other CCGs until eventually they just, I think the only CCG they do anymore, I think, is Magic. But they did the Dune game. They did the first iteration of Netrunner. I think did they do a superhero game at some point or not? I can't even remember. It's been a long time. But this fact that they did a game with Jim Lee and Wildstorm, this, I guess, has just been completely effaced by history. One of many projects from Wildstorm in this period that just got sidelined by them being purchased by Warner Brothers, lock, stock, and barrel. And, I don't know how many ways I can say, being purchased by Warner Brothers was terrible for Wildstorm. It was just down the line. He's decided he wants to play with the broom. You can learn how to push that around if you'd like. That might not be such a bad idea, young man. So yeah, there's our heroes. These are our heroes. They're walking around the forest. I forget what these people's names are. I'm sorry. There's just not that much Battle Chasers material in the world for me to have to remember these people's names, even though I like looking at their adventures. There aren't very many Battle Chasers adventures, certainly not very many illustrated by, the man himself. Oh, early Hip Flask stuff. Hip Flask. What became, what was, man, now I can't even remember. What was the name of the series that Hip Flask became? Oh, this is going to bug me. Elephant Men, that was the name of it. And Elephant Men ended up running for years. I read part of the run. It turned out to be a remarkably depressing comic book, an extraordinarily depressing comic book, but it looks fantastic for pretty much the entirety of its run. Very dark, European-ish, military, political sci-fi. One of the main characters is this PI character, Hip Flask, who started life as a mascot for Comicraft. And eventually they, wrapped an epic around him and his world. Definitely, if you come across any Elephant Men, and that's something that sounds, interesting to you at all, it's not bad material. It is very depressing, though. It is very depressing. Sci-fi about the aftermath of a war, basically. Oh, I don't even remember what this guy's name was, but I think this guy's like the big swordsman or something. One of the central figures. So yeah, they're getting the band together, so to speak. I already have letters. Don't recognize any of these names. So yeah, this is the end of Stormwatch. Warren Ellis, Brian Hitch, Paul Neary, Stormwatch 10. And they must be either dead or about to be killed by the aliens from, the 20th century Fox movie, Aliens. Anyway, those guys' finest moment was killing most of the Stormwatch team that would switch over to become the Authority. Oh man, this ad sold a lot of milk. Ain't gonna lie. They tricked us. They tricked us for years into thinking that this was the government telling us to drink milk. It's like, no. Just the milk processor promotion board. All right, Wildstorm news. You can tell it's summer when Wildstormers start flying all over the country for conventions and personal appearances. July brings us to Wizard World, Chicago, blah, blah, blah. So, Wildstorm New Horizons variant cover poster. Travis Tress variant covers for Wildstorm's New Horizon launches last year. See, they were already relaunching all of the Wildstorm books, like in 1997. Wildstorm existed as a perpetual state of relaunch for 15 years, and people wonder why nothing stuck. But this is a Travis Tress poster that looks like it's got some nice art on it. Oh wow, July Emporium Loot. They had a Jones Soda assortment. Now Jones Soda is still around, but I remember in the late 90s when I discovered Jones Soda, it felt like, I don't know, maybe I'm showing my age because I think you can still buy Jones Soda just about anywhere. But when I was just buying it in like weird stores in bigger cities in California in the late 90s on trips, I remember I liked it enough that I had friends coming back from trips bringing me Jones Soda from elsewhere in the state because their cream soda was that good. That good. Yeah, that's just... And now you can buy it anywhere, and I never drink it anymore. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should track some of that down. All right, so from the Wildstorm branch, DV8 was up to 20, Gen 13 was up to 31. So I think we're into the Gary Frank run at that point. Stormwatch 9, Wetworks was up to 42. I bailed out on Wetworks long before that. I bought Wetworks for as long as Will Sportasio kept drawing it, but he did not keep drawing it for that long. Gen 13 bootleg number 20. That is an interesting series. If you run across any Gen 13 bootleg, pretty much every issue has someone good on it. Gen 13 Monkey Man and O'Brien. That was 2 issues. I don't think I have that. Jim Lee's C23, which was, I guess, designed to tie into the card game. Gen 13 Interactive Plus. I don't remember who did that interactive storyline. Was that? I'm going to get it wrong if I try to just guess. Cliffhanger, Crimson and Danger Girl are up to number 3. This issue of Battle Chasers isn't even listed, so it was probably shipping a bit late. Now, strangely enough, Homage Comics as an imprint, it did actually survive the switch over to Warner Brothers, but they were up to issue 11 of Leave It to Chance. I don't know if Leave It to Chance went over to the DC Homage books. I can't remember. I know that they ultimately didn't make as much Leave It to Chance as some people would have liked. I only had a few issues of it. It was good. It was decent. It was fun, but also kind of inessential, considering it had, Paul Smith art. That's my recollection of it, at least. All right, here's some fun. House of Mystery 305 from the tail end of the book after it has become a I, Vampire headlining book. And in hindsight, you go back and look and see he probably bought this series at least a year or two, just having a semi-popular headlining character with this is a William Michael Kaluta cover here. Anytime you run across any of the old House of Mysteries with I, Vampire, you're almost certainly going to find that brought you running. You're going to find something really nice. This issue has some of the nicest art of the run, I think. So anyway, as I was saying, behind this gorgeous William Michael Kaluta cover with our boy Andrew Bennett stuck in the desert of Egypt right as the sun is coming up, which isn't that great if the name of your feature is called I, Vampire. This was just a high caliber comic book magazine in terms of the talent that they were putting on these features. We open up, you get a nice picture of Kane walking through the sewers here with his pet alligator and a giant rat. Here is an important ad in comic book history for the 1982 Swamp Thing movie by Wes Craven. This movie was not necessarily popular, but it ended up being extraordinarily influential for the comic books for one specific reason. They gave Swamp Thing a new series when this movie came out. And for the first 18 issues, nothing really became of it. So the series that they launched to capitalize on the movie, it didn't really do a lot. It lasted 18 issues before they put a new creative team on it. And then the creative team they happened to put on that book featured a hot young writer in from Britain. Anyway, they relaunched Swamp Thing. The relaunched Swamp Thing book didn't really do a lot. They gave it to a new writer, a guy you may have heard of named Alan Moore. He proceeded to, do some interesting things with it that were completely beyond the scope of anything having to do with the character as of the advent of this movie. So even though, the biggest impact this movie had is it was played, night and day on the early HBO channel. And that's where I saw it as a very small child, just watching TV during the day when I was very young. And that's why I started buying Swamp Thing at an age that was too young to be buying the Alan Moore Swamp Thing because I love the movie so much. But that would be the direction of where DC's horror books would go, because this format, the newsstand-friendly anthology, even with a headlining character, it wasn't a format that was long for this world in the early 80s. They needed to figure out a different way to sell horror comics. Alan Moore just happened to be right over the horizon with a lesson in the matter. As for this, this comic in my hand right here features a story drawn by Mr. Trevor Von Eeden. Oh, yes. Trevor Von Eeden. I may very well end up doing this on the TikTok someday because we do a lot of Trevor Von Eeden on that show. Written by Joey Cavalieri, I think inked by Pablo Marcus, John Costanza, letterer, Jerry Serpre, colorist. Very young Karen Berger as editor. She's just taken over, and this is part of her, first moves on the organization. And my goodness, this is early Von Eeden. He started work in the mid-70s, but really, in terms of early 80s is when you really start to see him pull together his mature style, outgrow a number of bad habits, learn a simplicity that would much later become very significant for David Mazzucchelli. So yeah, it's some kind of, I'm not going to read the words here. What do you expect me to do? Actually read for you? Something to do with some horror story about painting. So you get to see this interesting page of Trevor Von Eeden doing all sorts of weird, surreal painting effects. There's some Munch and some Magritte and some Dali for you. Is that that was a Bubble Yum ad. Double Dynamite, 2 dynamic debuts from the new DC. First issue of Firestorm. Not the very first issue of Firestorm. That was a while back. I think a few years ago, like in 78, 79, because Al Milgrom was at DC to help co-create Firestorm, and then he would be at Marvel for the next 2 decades after that. And then they're doing Tales of the New Teen Titans, which is, I guess, an anthology of origin issues, a mini-series of origin issues. Okay. Oh, there's your Magritte. How many artists do you know who could just do this type of, fine art pastiche off the top of their head like this? Trevor Von Eeden is in a class by himself, folks. And he's not afraid to do like a whole page practically in silhouette. We read an issue of his Vigilante. I think he did a couple issues of Vigilante. And we read one of the issues, again, on the Tech Talk, but that's where I read all my interesting comic books, by him, that it was almost completely in silhouette. Masterclass. Absolute masterclass. Trevor Von Eeden is one of the best artists this industry has yet and will ever produce. Cheers, Mystery Mongols, and welcome to Kane's Mailroom. They're still using the Sergio Aragones header there, and he hasn't been on the books for like 4 or 5 years. Your scintillating caretaker and slap-happy host here with a couple of real interesting letters from a couple of real fiendish fans. Don't recognize either of those names, but there's a significantly long letter from Lisa Levely from Montreal, Quebec. If I recall correctly, there were lots of female letter hacks. And Todd McFarlane was a letter hack during these years of the DC horror books. You see his name fairly often in the letters page. So here's a Bruce Jones joint on writing. Bruce Jones, probably the thing of his that people know now most is his Hulk. But he had already done years at Warren, specifically in their their horror line. That is what I think of as being his primary claim to fame. He did some work for DC actually in the 21st century. He had a run on Nightwing, which I don't think was very well received. His Khazar, early 80s Marvel Khazar, Bruce Jones, interesting series. I don't get the feeling that he liked Khazar much. I think he actually liked writing Shanna and would have preferred to write a Shanna solo book because he kept putting Khazar in the hospital. Fred Carrillo, artist, Janice Chang, letterer, rare Janice Chang, DC credit here. Another Jerry Serpent coloring joint. So this is some sort of Egyptian themed, scary story. A little bit, less scary than probably what Bruce Jones was doing for Warren magazine. And it ends with a couple mummies. But then you turn the page and what do you see? I, Vampire. Bruce Jones writing. Ernie Colón, guest artist. Yes. We looked at the Ernie Colón Doom 2099 the other day. We may very well look at more Ernie Colón Doom 2099. But today we're looking at Ernie Colón, I, Vampire. John Costanza letterer, Adrienne Roy. Coloring. Yeah. Now, you'll note here that J.M. DeMatteis has already moved on to greener pastures, so to speak. I want to say he signed an exclusive with Marvel in writing for DC, which is why he didn't do any more work for Karen Berger during the next decade. It was because he was writing a lot of books for Marvel over the next decade. Although he's since come back for DC and even did some work for Karen Berger in the 90s. So, yeah. Andrew Bennett. I love Andrew Bennett. He is a great protagonist. I'm not usually a fan of vampire stories, but this guy here, he's just a grade A sap and a sucker. He just walks around being a total simp, and that is like his adventures in a nutshell. He's stuck between two women, one of whom is the most evil woman who's ever lived. She's the queen of the vampires, and the other is kind of a, dish rag. But he is, constantly suspended between these, and so you get to see Ernie Colón drawing beautiful women, which is one of the great pleasures allotted to us on this earth. Look at this. Look at this. Look at how good. Look at how good this looks. Look at this. $0.60, folks. You could buy this at the drugstore when you were picking up all of your Valium. You could just buy 60 cents. House of Mystery. They're relaunching Saga of the Swamp Thing. What was I just saying? Because you demanded all new exploits of Comicdom's award-winning Muck Monster. Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew is already up to, that looks like issue 4, I think. Green Lantern, he's still being published. Eric is fantastic. Eric has a lot of really great Ernie Colón work on it, especially the first couple years. And the run of Flash with the Keith Giffen, Dr. Fate backups. Yeah, DC they were making moves. They were trying to do things. So they're going around the desert doing something or other. Oh, there's a vampire killing a camel. I guess they're desperate. Their black eyes burned. From the cowled, pale faces, each an expression of bestial bloodlust. Their long white fangs glistened against the crimson-smeared mouths. Look at this. Look at how gorgeously this is colored right here. Ernie Colón knows how to use this negative space. My God. Then, unbelievably, within seconds they lay about me as lifeless as the sand itself, as if a black and fatal plague had swept through on a mysterious night wind, a plague that killed vampires, yet had not killed me. And there she is. There's Mary, Queen of Blood. Look at this. Look at how gorgeous this comic book is. Some people think we publish Batman twice a month. Maybe they know something you don't. That's an interesting ad. Okay, I get it. For 88 cents each, you can order fake cockroaches, exploding cigars, engraved pennies, hand buzzer. And see, she's just this absolutely evil woman who just keeps trying to give Andrew Bennett a guilt trip that he's not being a good vampire and, going out and, killing people with her. If we could get the rings, we could use them to return to our own time, a time when we were still human. Please, Andrew, if you ever loved me. See. She just walks around giving him ultimatums when she's not murdering a snake. Code approved, folks. Yeah. iVampire. And then when they brought it back with for the New 52. And we looked at an issue of that on the Tech Talk as well. They kept that basic dynamic intact. Basically, she's evil, he's a vampire, but he's not really evil. But at the same time, he's sort of, he's hooked on her. It's one of those dynamics. And there's this other girl who, keeps trying to get in the way. Catch more fish, bigger fish, or your money back. Free, Lone Ranger Western Town. And since we're on the subject of nice-looking comic books, this is one that you may have read before. I just happened to come across when I was looking through the comics, and I think, I've read this in at least like a year. I have read this comic many times. You could say it's one of my favorite comics because it's the one, it's not the one where Rogue joins the X-Men. It's a few issues after she joins. And she is on a trip to Japan with the team, right in time to see Wolverine get completely creamed at his own wedding. But, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a take on, the very famous first cover for X-Men. What was the original issue number? 173. Well, this is X-Men Classic 77 with a version by Adam Hughes, because he did the covers for the X-Men Classic for, about 10 issues, 12 issues around this time, during the period when Rogue joins the team. So you get a delightful picture of Adam Hughes' Rogue right here on the cover. So, Chris Claremont writing, Paul Smith from his epical run of X-Men. He drew the book for less than a year, and he practically changed the entire industry. And then he noped out and said, I would rather draw Doctor Strange. And literally everyone wondered, like, wait a minute, did we hear you correctly? You really want to go draw Doctor Strange instead of the number one book? I don't know if it was number one at the time, but it was a big book already, even by 1983. He was ready to move on. And he ended up doing a fair amount of Doctor Strange, too. Really a very important decision for the history of the mainstream. You have to wonder what he could have done if he'd have just been on the book for another year or two. Now, of course, he was replaced by John Romita Jr., who ended up being a more than able replacement. But it's not my favorite John Romita Jr. work by any means. I think it was definitely transitional for John Romita Jr. because it's after X-Men, which I think maybe was even a couple hard years of work for him. He goes on to do Starbrand, and then he goes on to do Daredevil in the late 80s, and that's when his work truly transforms to the John Romita Jr. we know today. But all that was set into motion because Paul Smith decided that he didn't really want to be on one of the biggest books in the industry. I remember seeing the ads for this, but I never played it. The Marvel Superheroes game from Pressman. From the period in the 90s when they were really, really pushing all the Marvel licensing when they could, and it really seemed like a lot at the time, and little did we know. Little did we know. So this is rightfully one of the most famous comics of the run because it's a team up between Wolverine, who is basically tearing the Japanese underworld apart, trying to figure out what's going on with the woman he loves. And Rogue, who, keep in mind, he is not friends with Rogue yet. He does not even like Rogue yet. As far as he's concerned, Rogue is someone who spent the last couple of years trying to kill him and people that he loves. And she just suddenly showed up one day when he was out of town, no less. So literally, the way Wolverine finds out that Rogue joined the X-Men is that she shows up to his wedding. He was not very happy about that. And he wasn't happy when she decided to come along with him, as he's going to wreck half, the town. But he consents because essentially, she's an X-Men now. Let's show her the ropes. Hope you survive the experience, etc., etc. I do so enjoy watching a professional work. Playing your sidekick has proven to be a real education, Wolvie, in more ways than one. So here's some guy who tries to take her out with a sigh, and the blade just bends because she is bulletproof. She's got the Carol Danvers suite of powers. Although, not the binary powers. And here's Storm hanging out with Yukio. They all go to Japan and hang out with Yukio. So they're infiltrating a mansion, and she, because she doesn't have to really be stealthy, she sets off this electronic tripwire that sends out a robot to get him, and he has to make her duck. And he has to knock her down so that she ducks in time. Just very perfectly clear, pellucid storytelling, considering this is all of this happens in less than a page, and yet it reads so cleanly. Oh, and here she makes her first mistake, joking around to kiss Wolverine, and he's like, nope, you try that again, and I'm going to kill you. I didn't mean any harm, and that's why you're still breathing, and that is the last time she ever tries that with Wolverine. Oh boy. I think I've already mentioned this. Spider-Man in the X-Men game was too hard for me. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't a good enough person to beat it. I accept that. I live with that. I forget what Storm and Yukio are up to. She's still got her lightning. She hasn't lost her weather powers yet. That's going to happen the next year. Because of Rogue's fault, actually, as it would turn out. Oh, now this is an excellent page. Look at all these horizontal panels here. Look at this. Damn. And there's Viper. Gotta love Viper. I always wonder why Viper isn't a bigger deal. If I wrote comics, if they let me write comics, I'd put Viper in everything I did. Why? Well, why not? Have you ever seen her? Have you ever seen Viper? That is a character that you want to put in a comic book, if ever there was. What do I know? Oh, and there's a famous shot that is homaged quite a bit. Rogue clotheslining these ninjas. She's only a girl. Despite her powers, while you remain the deadliest assassin in Japan, kill her. So, Ninja's got to keep her busy while the Viper gets up to whatever she's doing here. Oh, and this sequence here. This very famous sequence of Wolverine fighting the Silver Samurai. No words, no sound effects, just these vertical panels here. My God. They were cooking. They were cooking something. Who colored this again? Glennis Wine knows when to use this really bright, eye-catching red that just sets everything else in contrast. Wolverine, he's getting it. He's getting stabbed. He's getting sword to the neck. Doesn't kill him because he's got bones, but ultimately it takes more than that to kill him. Logan said, "No, enough blood has been spilled, beloved. Let this be an end to it. My half-brother's lost. Grant him his life." "I'll do this, Mariko. This'll never be over. He'll keep coming back till one of you is dead." And indeed, I still say, and I'm not really giving anything away because the comic is over 30 years old, but even though it was, I think, a Larry Hama decision, getting rid of his girlfriend here, him having a girlfriend who he tragically can't be with because she is a Yakuza boss, that is gold. You want that to be like part of your character's foundation forever. Nope, we're going to kill her off in like 1992. That'll be it. That was a mistake. That was a big mistake. So, yeah. But when it comes down to it, when the chips are down, Rogue takes the shot for Wolverine. And it's actually, because it's Viper and she's got access to probably all sorts of Hydra stuff, she has a gun that can kill Wolverine and can even hurt Rogue. This blaster must be something else. I can actually feel its effect, but I've got to keep blocking Viper's shot no matter what. Lady Mariko was kind to me. She accepted me right off. I won't let any harm come to her. And because she's a hero, she takes the shot. Guess I ain't as invulnerable as I thought. And in order to save her, he's got to kiss her so that she takes his healing. Oh, there you go. There's a page flip for you. It's Barry Sanders. Believes that a Super Bowl ring is worth dying for. Did he ever get a Super Bowl ring? I don't know. Someone probably knows. He played for Detroit, so probably not. Just look at how beautiful this is. And Rogue isn't the first thing that the rest of the team gets to meet. It's Madeline Pryor arriving with Cyclops, and the first thing that Alondra wants to do is murder the Jean Grey clone. Frankly, her first instinct was probably right. And it's interesting that, all the X-Men, even though still in the early 80s, Wolverine is a loner who has a rough reputation. He's still, all the X-Men come together for his wedding as friends. Lorna Dane and Alex Summers, even though, he barely knew Alex at this point. Alex still comes for the wedding. And another famous first, Storm's Mohawk. My apologies for being late. And Storm, she just changes her look overnight. So Kitty Pryde, because she is still a 13-year-old girl, she freaks out. Because that's what, small children do when, one of their parent figures, changes. I mean, when I was 4, I freaked out because my dad shaved his beard. That's what children do. And, nice to have the reminder that Kitty Pryde is still effectively a child at this point in the story. And of course, if you listen to Chris Claremont, she would still be 13 up through like the late 90s. Jerry Rice. Maybe in a few years the game will catch up. And famously, oh, and Madeline Pryor finds the dragon in the baby blanket. Wait till you meet my grandparents, Professor. You've all got to come up visit us in Alaska. And that's just great physical comedy right there, with her grabbing his tie, like, what did you get me into? That's funny. We're taking a moment to breathe and live with these characters. And, you know, it's a testament to how well, I think, Chris Claremont sold these characters that later, shall we say, revelations, they never sit right. If you've read this original run of stories, it doesn't feel right, because he does such a good job of selling this new setup. And they have to go abandoning it, like, oh no, you're going to abandon your wife on the floor in Alaska so you can go to New York and play around with people you went to high school with, and that won't make people hate you forever. I'm sorry, Cyclops. I hate you forever for leaving Madeline Pryor. And here we go. He's like, yeah, I can't be wedded to you. Why not? Because you are not worthy. And really, it's not that. It's this guy. And this is 173. This is part of the build-up to 175, which is the big return of Dark Phoenix. Not really, but it's all wrapped up in this character here. Yeah, man. And there's the original cover for you to compare. And, you know, if you didn't already know, you know, someone like Adam Hughes, that he was able to make a career with, you know, his style is due directly, I think, to the influence of Paul Smith. He was really a pioneer in terms of just bringing that elevated drawing ability to the page like that. I mean, one reason why Doctor Strange might have appealed to him was because Doctor Strange was a bi-monthly comic book. X-Men was monthly, and it had big, giant-sized anniversary issues all the time. Ooh. That's fat. That's unhealthy. Yeah. But if I could go back and subscribe to Motormouth, Gru, Tech World, man, we ate well in the early 90s. And this first run of Marvel Masterpieces, this was a nice looking set. You know, if you can deal with Joe Jusko, this is some really nice work from Joe Jusko. And they did a series of these paintings in comic book format, like a year or two later, that are, you know, worth tracking down if you're a fan of Joe Jusko and want to see these pieces blown up. Oh, and the Game Genie's going to Genesis. Dogs and cats together. And looks like that's about our show right there. Well, we looked at 3 comics. We even looked at an issue of X-Men, so you can't say I didn't get my pandering in. So the first thing I want to do, as always, is to point you in the direction of this right here, Comics Journal Yearbook Best of 2023. It's just fresh on the stands. It's got 10 pieces of writing by 10 of the best writers about comics working today, including, somehow, you know, they let a certain someone, such as myself, sneak in the back door and stink up the joint with an essay about Monica by Daniel Clowes. I'm proud of this essay. I'm proud of being able to be printed alongside all these other wonderful creators. So go check this out. You will enjoy it. What else is there? Oh, yeah. Check out my Patreon. If you like these videos, if you like anything I do, that's where you show your appreciation. I got tons of my writing, years worth of my writing there for you to download right this very second. What else is there? I got daily comic book reviews on TikTok and Instagram. I have a podcast with Claire Napier. It's called Udder Madness. We talk about Top Cow Comics. We just put up a new bonus summer episode about the new Witchblade #1 from Image Comics. It's available right now at this very moment for you to go listen to. What else? Should have a new review up at the Journal, possibly by the time you see this, on the subject of Godzilla. I think that's enough. I just put up a new video where I read through the first volume of Fist of the North Star. That's in addition to new videos about new comics going up every week. They're called Hey Tegan, What's in the Bag? I don't know. I think that's enough stuff. So please, take care of yourself. Take care of the world. It's rough out there. Take care of animals and be kind to small children. And have a wonderful day.